Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 5. November 4th, 1921. Sanctity in the creature must be between her and Jesus. He, giving his life and communicating his sanctity to her as her faithful companion, and she, receiving it as his faithful and inseparable companion. I felt all identified with my sweet Jesus, and as he came, I flung myself into his arms, abandoning myself completely in him, as in my own center. I felt an irresistible force to be in his arms. And my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, this is the creature seeking the bosom of her Creator, to rest in his arms. It is your duty to come into the arms of your Creator, and to rest in that bosom from which you came out. In fact, you must know that many electric wires of communication and of union pass between the creature and the Creator, that render her almost inseparable from me, as long as she has not withdrawn from my will, because withdrawing is nothing other than snapping the wires of communication and breaking the union. The life of the Creator, more than electricity, flows within the creature, and she flows within me. My life is spread within the creature. In creating her, I linked my wisdom to her intelligence, so that it might be nothing other than the reverberation of mine. And if man reaches such great extent with his science as to give of the incredible, it is the reflection of mine that is reflected in his. If his eye is animated by a light, it is nothing other than the reflection of my eternal light being reflected in his eye. Among ourselves, the three divine persons, we had no need to speak in order to understand one another. In creation, I wanted to use the word, and I said Fiat, and things were made. But to this Fiat I bound and gave the power that creatures might have the word in order to understand one another. So the human voices also are bound, as by an electric wire, to my first word, from which all others descend. And as I created man, I breathed on him with my breath, infusing life in him. But in this life that I infused in him, I placed the whole of my life, according to what the human capacity could contain. But I placed everything in him. There was nothing of my own that I did not share with him. See, even his breath is the reflection of my breath, with which I give him continuous life, and his breath is reflected in mine, and I feel it continuously in me. See then how many relations there are between me and the creature. This is why I love her so much, because I look at her as a birth from me, and exclusively mine. And then how did I ennoble the will of man? I linked it with mine, giving it all my prerogatives. I made it free like mine, and if to the body I had given two little lights, limited, circumscribed, that started from my eternal light, the human will I made all eyes. So as many acts as the human will forms, so many eyes can it say it possesses. It looks to the right and to the left, to the back, to the front, and if the human will is not animated by this will, it shall do nothing good. In creating it, I said to it, "You shall be my sister on earth. My will from heaven shall animate yours. We shall be in continuous reflections, and whatever I shall do, You shall do as well. I by nature, and you by the grace of my continuous reflections. I shall follow you like a shadow. I shall never leave you. My only purpose in creating the creature was that she would do my will in everything. But with this, I wanted to bring into existence new births of myself. I wanted to make of her a portentous prodigy, worthy of me, and fully similar to me. But alas, the first to put itself against me was going to be the human will. Take a look. All things are done between two. You have eyes, but if you did not have an external light that illuminates you, you would not be able to see anything. You have hands, but if you did not have the things that are needed in order to form works, you would do nothing. And so with all the rest. Now, this is how I want sanctity in the creature, between her and me, between the two of us. I on one side, and she on the other. I giving my life and communicating my sanctity to her as her faithful companion, and she receiving it as my faithful and inseparable companion. In this way, she would be the eye that sees, and I the sun that gives her light. She the mouth, and I the word. She the hands, and I the one who administers the work to let her operate. She the foot, and I the step. She the heart, and I the heartbeat. But do you know who forms this sanctity? My will alone is what maintains the purpose of creation in order. The sanctity in my will is that which maintains perfect balance between creatures and Creator. These are the true images that came out of me. November 8th, 1921. To live in the divine will means to multiply the life of Jesus, to repeat all the good that his life contains. Blessed are you, and all generations shall call you blessed. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen while taking a light that was in my interior and carrying it away. I cried out, "Jesus, what are you doing? You want to leave me in the dark?" And he, with all sweetness, told me, "My daughter, do not fear. I am taking your little light with me, and I leave you mine. This little light of yours is nothing other than your will, that having placed itself in front of mine, has received the reflection of my will. This is why it has become a light. I am taking it with me in order to let it make its round. I shall take it to heaven as the most rare and beautiful thing. That is the human will that has received the reflection of the will of its Creator. I shall let it make its round among the divine persons, so that they may receive the homages, the adorations of their own reflections, the only ones worthy of them. Then I shall show it to all the saints, so that they too may receive the glory of the reflections of the divine will in the human will. And then I shall make it flow through all the earth, so that all may take part in such a great good." Immediately I added, "My love, forgive me. I thought you wanted to leave me in the dark. This is why I said, 'What are you doing?' But when it is about my will, feel free to take it and do whatever you want." Now, while Jesus was carrying this little light in his hands, I am unable to say what happened. I lack the words to express myself. I just remember that he placed the little light in front of his person, and the little light received all his reflections in such a way as to form another Jesus. And every time my will repeated the acts, so many Jesuses were multiplied. And my Jesus told me, "Do you see what it means to live in my will? To multiply my life as many times as one wants, to repeat all the good that my life contains." After this, I was saying to my Jesus, "My life, I enter into your will to be able to extend myself in everyone and to everything, from the first to the last thought, from the first to the last word, from the first to the last action and step that were done, are done, and shall be done. I want to seal everything with your will, so that you may receive from everything the glory of your sanctity, of your love, of your power, and all that is human may remain covered, hidden, marked by your volition, so that nothing human may remain in which you do not receive divine glory." Now, while I was doing this and other things, my sweet Jesus came all festive, accompanied by innumerable blessed, and said, "All of creation says to me, 'My glory, my glory.' And all the saints responded, 'Behold, O Lord, we give you divine glory for everything.' An echo could be heard from all sides saying, 'For everything we give you love and glory.' And Jesus added, 'Blessed are you, and all generations shall call you blessed. My arm shall make works of power in you. You shall be the divine reflection, and filling the whole earth, you shall make me receive from all generations that glory that they deny to me.' On hearing this, I remained confounded, annihilated, and I did not want to write. And he, caressing me, told me, 'No, no, you shall do it. I want it. What I said shall serve for the honor of my will.' I myself wanted to pay the just homage that befits the sanctity in my will. Even more, I said nothing compared to what I could say." November 12th, 1921. The sanctity in the divine will has no boundaries. It is the sanctity that is the closest to the Creator. It shall have primacy over all other sanctities. The divine will is eternal miracle. I write only to obey. Otherwise, I would not be good at marking down a single word. And only the fear that I might sadden my sweet Jesus if I did not do it gives me drive and strength. Now he continues to speak about his most holy will, and on coming he said to me, "My daughter, the sanctity in my will is not yet known. This is the reason for their wonderment. In fact, when something has been known, the wonderment ceases. All sanctities are symbolized by something that is spread in creation. There are sanctities symbolized by mountains, others by trees, others by plants, the little flower, the stars, and many other similes. All of these sanctities have their own limited and individual good. They have their beginning as well as an end. They cannot embrace everything and do good to all, just as a tree or a flower cannot do so. Now, the sanctity in my will shall be symbolized by the sun. The sun has always been and shall always be, and even though it had a beginning in illuminating the world, since it is light that took origin from my eternal light, it can be said that it has no beginning. The sun does good to all. It extends to all with its light. It makes no exception with anyone. With its majesty and its dominion, it rules over everything and gives life to everything, even to the littlest flower, but silently, without noise, and almost unobserved. Oh, if a plant did a little something, a shadow of what the sun does, giving heat to another plant, all would proclaim a miracle. All would want to see it, and would talk about it with amazement. The sun that gives life and heat to everything, and is the continued miracle, no one talks about it. No amazement. And this happens because man keeps his eyes always down below and on earthly things, never up high and on celestial things. Now the sanctity in my will, symbolized by the sun, shall come out from the center of my sanctity. It shall be a ray delivered by my sanctity that has no beginning. So these souls existed in my sanctity. They exist and shall exist. They were together with me in the good I did. They never went out of the ray in which I had issued them to the light. As they never departed from my will, I amused myself with them, and I still do. My union with them is permanent. I see them floating above everything. Human supports do not exist for them, just as the sun does not lean on anything. It lives up high as though isolated, but with its light it encloses everything within itself. The same for these souls. They live up high like the sun, but their light descends to the deepest bottom and extends to all. I would feel as if I defrauded them if I did not keep them aware of and did not let them do what I do. So there is no good that does not descend from them. In this sanctity I see my shadows, my images, hovering over the whole earth, in the air, in heaven. And this is why I love and shall love the world, because I am waiting for my sanctity to have its echo upon earth, for my rays to come out to the light, and give me complete glory, returning to me the love and the honor that others have not given me. However, just like the sun, they shall be the most unobserved, without any clamor. But if anyone wants to look at them, my jealousy shall be such that they shall run the risk of remaining blinded, and shall be forced to lower their gazes in order to regain their sight. Do you see how beautiful is the sanctity in my will? It is the sanctity that is the closest to your Creator. Therefore it shall have primacy over all other sanctities. It shall enclose within itself all other sanctities together, and shall be life of all other sanctities. What grace for you to know it! To be the first, like solar ray, to come out from the center of my sanctity, without ever detaching from it. Greater grace I could not give you. More portentous a miracle I could not operate in you. Be attentive, my daughter, my ray, because every time you enter into my will and operate, it happens as when the sun hits the glass. Many suns are formed in it. In the same way, you repeat my life as many times. You multiply it. You give new life to my love. Then after this I was thinking to myself, in this holy will, one does not see miracles, portentous things, for which creatures are so greedy, and would go around half the world in order to have some. On the contrary, everything passes between the soul and God. And if creatures receive, they do not know where the good has come from. Truly, it is like the sun, which is such that, while it gives life and heat to everything, nobody points at it. Now, as I was thinking of this, my Jesus, coming back, added, but with an imposing appearance, "What miracles! What miracles! Isn't perhaps doing my will the greatest miracle? My will is eternal, and is eternal miracle that never ends. For the human will to have a continuous connection with the divine will, this is miracle of each instant. Raising the dead, giving sight to the blind and the like, are not eternal things. They are subject to perishing. Therefore they can be called shadows of miracles, fleeting miracles, compared to the great and permanent miracle of living in my will. You pay no attention to those miracles. I know when they are appropriate and when they are needed." November 16th, 1921. Sin is chain that binds man, and Jesus wanted to be bound in order to break his chains. This morning my always lovable Jesus made himself seen all bound. Bound were his hands, his feet, his waist. A thick iron chain came down from his neck. But he was bound so tightly that his divine person was deprived of motion. What a harsh position, such as to make even the stones cry. And my highest good, Jesus told me, "My daughter, during the course of my passion, all other pains competed among themselves, but they would alternate, and one would give place to another. Almost like sentries, they would mount guard to do the worst to me, to boast of having been better than the other. But the ropes, they never removed from me. From the moment I was taken, up to Mount Calvary, I remained always bound. Rather, they kept adding more and more ropes and chains for fear that I might escape, and to make more fun of me. But how many pains, confusions, humiliations, and falls did these chains procure me? However, know that in these chains there was great mystery and great expiation. Man, as he begins to fall into sin, remains bound with the chains of his own sin. If it is grave, they are iron chains. If venial, they are chains of rope. So as he tries to walk in good, he feels the hindrance of the chains, and his step remains hindered. The hindrance that he feels wears him out, debilitates him, and leads him to new falls. If he operates, he feels the hindrance in his hands, and remains almost as if he had no hands to do good. In seeing him bound like this, passions make feast and say, "The victory is ours!" And from king as he is, they render him slave of brutal passions. How abominable man is in the state of sin! And I, in order to break his chains, wanted to be bound, and never wanted to be without chains, so as to keep my chains ever ready to break his. And when the blows, the shoves, made me fall, I stretched my hands toward him to untie him and render him free again. But as he was saying this, I saw almost all people bound by chains, such as to arouse pity. And I prayed Jesus to touch their chains with his chains, so that at the touch of his chains, those of the creatures would all be shattered. November 19th, 1921. The Two Props. In order to know the truths, it is necessary to have the will, the desire, to know them. The truths must be simple. I was keeping company with my Jesus, agonizing in the Garden of Gethsemane, and as much as I could, I compassionated him. I pressed him tightly to my heart, trying to wipe his mortal sweats. And my sorrowful Jesus, with faint and expiring voice, told me, "My daughter, hard and painful was my agony in the garden, maybe more painful than that of the cross. In fact, if that was the fulfillment and the triumph over all, here in the garden it was the beginning, and evils are felt more at the beginning than when they are ended. But in this agony, the most harrowing pain was when all sins came before me, one by one. My humanity comprehended all their enormity, and each crime carried the mark, death to a god, armed with sword to kill me. Before the divinity, sin appeared to me as so horrid and more horrible than death itself. In just comprehending what sin means, I felt myself dying, and I really died. I cried out to the Father, and he was inexorable. There was no one who would at least give me some help, so as not to let me die. I cried out to all creatures to have pity on me, but in vain. So my humanity languished, and I was about to receive the final death blow. But do you know who prevented its execution and sustained my humanity from dying? The first was my inseparable mamma. In hearing me ask for help, she flew to my side and sustained me, and I leaned my right arm on her. Almost dying, I looked at her, and I found in her the immensity of my will intact, without ever a break between my will and hers. My will is life, and since the will of the Father was immovable, and death was coming to me from creatures, another creature, who enclosed the life of my will, would give me life. And here is my mamma, who in the portent of my will conceived me and gave me birth in time, now giving me life a second time to let me accomplish the work of redemption. Then I looked to the left. and I found the little daughter of my will. I found you as the first, with the retinue of other daughters of my will. And since I wanted my mamma with me as the first link of mercy, by which we were to open the doors to all creatures, I therefore wanted to lean my right arm on her. As for you, I wanted you as the first link of justice, to prevent it from unloading itself upon all creatures as they deserve. Therefore I wanted to lean my left arm on you, so that you might sustain it together with me. With these two props, I felt life being given back to me, and as if I had suffered nothing, with firm step I went to meet my enemies, and in all the pains that I suffered during my passion, many of which were capable of giving me death, these two props never left me. And when they saw me nearly dying, with my own will that they contained, they sustained me, and gave me as though many sips of life. O prodigies of my will, who can ever number them and calculate their value? This is why I love so much the one who lives in my will. I recognize in her my portrait, my noble features. I feel my own breath, my voice. And if I did not love her, I would defraud myself. I would be like a father without offspring, without the noble cortege of his court, and without the crown of his children. And if I did not have the offspring, the court, the crown, how could I call myself king? So my kingdom is formed of those who live in my will. From this kingdom I choose the mother, the queen, the children, the ministers, the army, the people. I am everything for them, and they are everything for me. Then afterwards I was thinking about what Jesus had been telling me, and I said to myself, how can it be put into practice? And Jesus, returning, added, My daughter, in order to know the truths, it is necessary to have the will, the desire to know them. Imagine a room in which the shutters are closed. As much sunlight as there might be outside, the room remains always in the dark. Now, opening the shutters means wanting the light. But this is not enough if one does not take advantage of the light to reorder the room, dust it, get down to work, almost so as not to kill the light that one is given and render oneself ungrateful. In the same way, it is not enough to have the will to know the truths, if in the light of the truth that illuminates him, one does not try to dust himself of his weaknesses, and reorder himself according to the light of the truth he knows, and together with the light of the truth, get down to work, making of it his own substance, in such a way that the light of the truth that he has absorbed may shine forth from his mouth, from his hands, from his bearing. It would then be as if he killed the truth, and by not putting it into practice, it would be like remaining in total disorder before the light. Poor room, full of light, but all messy, upside down, and in total disorder, and someone in it who does not bother reordering it. What pity would it not arouse? Such is one who knows the truths and does not put them into practice. Know, however, that in all the truths, simplicity enters as the first nourishment. If the truths were not simple, they would not be light, and would not be able to penetrate into the human minds in order to illuminate them. And where there is no light, objects cannot be distinguished. Simplicity is not only light, but is like the air that one breathes, that while it cannot be seen, gives the respiration to everything. And if it wasn't for the air, the earth and everyone would remain without motion. So, if the virtues, the truths, do not carry the mark of simplicity, they shall be without light and without air. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 5. Fiat.